Today, we're going to have quite a few conversations about, what does an ecosystem do, and a lot of it is collaboration. But oftentimes we see that it should be a well-oiled machine that is able to make sure that the end result is the best for the driver. And sometimes that also leads to interesting partnerships, but oftentimes it also requires compromise. It requires some additional diplomacy to be handled. I'm going to start with a question to Clément, because you have seen firsthand how things develop in France as a very fast-paced growing market. And a lot of competition out there as well between market players in the end in order to make sure that they have the best solution. So when you speak with the consumers in the end of the day, what is one of the major things that you found out? I know that you do some surveys, and maybe you can share a bit more about that.
Yes, of course, and thank you for the invitation. So yes, in France we do a large national consumer survey, and the most recent one was in 2024. And one of the key results is that there is still a high satisfaction for eMobility. So we have found that 93% of EV drivers are satisfied with their vehicles. And it may be surprising to you, but it's even higher than the level of satisfaction from ICE drivers. So when you look at an ICE driver that gets a new vehicle, is less happy than an EV driver that gets its new EV. So it's a strong result, and it's still strong, even stronger, because we know that EV is going mainstream, and we are not between EV pioneers, early adopters. And going mainstream could also mean that there is higher expectation, lower tolerance for issues. Yeah. You don't go on an adventure with your electric car. You want everything to go smoothly. And we are also already seeing that, but still very high satisfaction.
All right. And if I can follow up, maybe you've looked into it a bit more granularly, but do you look across different use cases of charging? If certain public charging activities are seen as more, so to say, successful by the customers or not? Do you have any insights on that?
Yes. Well, it's, I think, one of the area where progress can still be made, because we have seen that only half of the EV drivers are satisfied with the public charging. Okay. So it's still too low, but we have seen an increase since the previous survey that was in 2020, with almost only EV pioneers. But we also know that EV drivers understand that there is a growth still happening, both in terms on quality and quantity. So this is also something that we are seeing within our survey, that understanding of the path we are in.
Yep.
We are on.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm sure that this is a public survey that you've published, so I encourage everyone to check the website and have a more detailed look. Plenty of more, and I've asked you several questions after. But turning to Italy now and the work you do at MOTUS-E, I'll be interesting to hear your take, because also very recently there was let me put it mildly, an interesting decision that happened in the market with the antitrust authority, and how the topic of pricing really emerged as a very critical one, not only for you regionally, but with the potential with AFIR now into effect to have ramifications across Europe. So, yeah, could you share more a bit about that, maybe some insights that you have on that?
Yeah, thank you again for the invitation. Yeah, the decision was made by the public authority on competition. And it regards mostly the price that CPO apply to the final customers, respect the price that CPO applies to to the MSPs that offers on their charging points. This is a huge problem, I think, in all over Europe. First of all, because we need to be very clear in the AFIR application on interoperability. This is something that we should really focus on as ecosystem, because nowadays it is not easy to identify the parity of conditions that should be applied to all the MSPs. Secondly, I really think we should take a look on the effects on the final customer, because at the end what we want is a charging experience that is not expensive and it is easy, you know. And with this kind of interventions in a market that it is not properly consolidated, the risk is that we cap a minimum price from the CPO, and so it's difficult to differentiate the offers in the market. So I'm really worried about the potential effects that these kind of decisions could impact the prices. Yeah. Let me say that the main problem nowadays in Italy is the margins. There are no margins because there are a lot of investment in DC charging, high power charging. This brought a lot of capex intensive investments that currently is not easy to repay. Yep. Because the utilization rate are really low.
I was about to ask you, the utilization rate.
The utilization rate is, the average utilization rate is really low. And most of all, in Italy, we have a huge problem of tariffs, energy tariffs applied to the CPOs. So actually, the point is how much space we have for the CPO to offer a clear and proper and right offer to the MSPs and towards the final customers. We are suffering from paradox nowadays that pure EMSPs are suffering. EMSPs that, for example, can offer bundle offers, and so they are interested in the leads towards new customers for other facilities. They can offer charging tariffs that are lower than ad hoc prices. Pure EMSPs offers and the EMSP of the CPO on the very same charging point. So,
and would those tariffs be available for everyone? Those rates?
Yeah, it really depends. Nowadays, we have also situations in which the customers are discriminated. Yeah. This is true. I mean, it's true all over Europe. So we really need that AFIR can, in some way give us some, a setup that is clear. Yeah. Because it's not clear nowadays. And I'm really worried that this could affect most of all the final customers.
Yeah. No, that's an absolutely fair point. And two things I want to add here. In the discussions ahead of AFIR coming into effect, we, as part of associations like Charge Up Europe, and also within eMobility Europe and other Brussels-based associations, we've had discussions with the Commission where, to my understanding at least, I was left with the impression that if there's one thing that will be considered illegal under AFIR, it will be price discrimination and user discrimination. And now with this decision, which was kind of retroactive, because it was for a period before AFIR came into effect, I think still it will open a lot of discussions. But at the same time, also, you're right, I mean, utilization rates and everything squeezing. It's difficult, especially for EMSPs, as you mentioned, to make sure they find their sweet spot right now again. But yeah, super interesting developments. And just for a bit of sort of detail here to add, we will not have a Q&A, but I invite you to catch our panelists afterwards as well. But moving on to you, Felix. I mean, I just want you to share your personal experience, honestly, of this post-AFIR market reality when it comes to pricing, and some of the markets that you've visited with an electric car.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here. Yeah, one of the strangest things, I guess, is just that I've been driving EVs all over Europe since 2018, more or less. And the reason I went to go electric, I tried a lot of rental cars, is that per kilometer, they were way cheaper than anything else. So I used to take the train to Germany to rent diesel cars to go to Portugal, for example, simply because that got me the best euro per mile. And in 2018, I found out that I could find EVs that simply brought the cost down. And one of the things I did not expect is that if I would have rented an EV for this trip to Berlin, I come from Amsterdam, then that trip, if I didn't prepare myself well with the right subscription and the right charging card for Germany, then suddenly it would have been way more expensive to drive here and drive home compared to, yeah, let's say in 2020 when I did this all the time, actually. So I wonder, I know that the electricity price in Germany between then and today actually went down. And on average, the price I pay at a German fast charger, that is way easier to find than it was 5 years ago. And it's also way faster. This part is true. Why did that price go up? And why did transparency go down? Because actually, yeah, I guess AFIR will be blamed by some German CPOs that they sort of increased B2B pricing because it has to be at the same level of ad hoc pricing. But I just, for me, simply as a user of charging, I just wonder how it can be that nowadays, I drove in Denmark in 2019. And first of all, there were hardly any chargers in Denmark. Second of all, they weren't fast. And third of all, maybe actually point number one, they were expensive. Nowadays, when I drive to Copenhagen, I can easily do this at half the price compared to a trip to Berlin. And it's like Denmark became an EV paradise, chargers everywhere, serious competition between CPOs, pricing totems that show me the price that I will get whenever I use a credit card or whatever payment. Yeah. And then I go to Berlin and everything shuts down and there's no clarity about anything. And if I use a credit card, well, forget about German EV driving. So, yeah, I don't really know how we got to 2025 the way that we did, but this is not what I expected.
So, I mean, I get your frustration, and you mentioned about Denmark. Now, I've also heard some other opinions about how the market is shaping up there with regards to some specific players. But you know, looking at your frustration, what would you recommend as a solution? Would it be full transparency? Would it be, and by full transparency, I mean going beyond simply saying what are the idle fees, what are the different capacities, but here looking, do you want to have some insights into the margins of those companies? I mean, what are the solutions?
Well, I think the transparency is just hugely important because, yeah, right now, if you arrive, especially in Germany, at a fast charging station, yeah, the odds are high that it's simply not that easy to find out what you will be paying for your kilowatt hour. But then also, if you look at the German market, yeah, ideally, there's something weird happening because, for example, in Berlin, there's now a ton of AC chargers available. And when I used to go here, let's say 5 years ago, there was hardly any AC charger around. And they might not even be working. And so I can see a lot of improvement. Like Berlin has an abundant amount of AC chargers today. But weirdly enough, I feel like it's a bit of a German thing, but maybe it's not. But the Germans, they love to challenge us with blocking. They usually call them blocking fees. Other people call them idle fees. It doesn't really matter what you call them, but a lot of AC charging in Germany you will incur a fee as soon as you cross the 3-hour threshold or the 4-hour threshold, sometimes even the 6-hour.
So you would disagree that that makes sense in the charging market?
Well, the thing is that when I park an EV, then that should not lead to a challenge that I wasn't used to driving a car before, that I will have to figure out if this is the right plug to use.
No, of course. I see your point. I see your point. And typically, there would be solutions that can give you a notification if that idle period is coming up. Of course, you typically should know about it in advance. But you were just discussing prices earlier, and that got me to think, okay, so if the CPO doesn't have those idle fees, they will not have people charging more energy on the chargers, so they will end up having a higher price for the customers, which is what you don't want either. So that's why I'm just thinking out loud right now, and perhaps I would disagree here that those idle fees are something that's bad for the market. I would argue actually otherwise, but I get your point about the experience and going there and being struck by something like that, because I've heard stories of people just being unaware of those things, and I agree there should be a bit more transparency. I don't know, Clément, in France, do you see some of that as well, in terms of some specific things that would frustrate drivers, or generally something which relates to how the pricing structure of the session is?
Yes, of course. I think the two main pain points for French EV drivers, but I think it's all European EV drivers, are first information and second pricing. Of course, information is fragmented, spread all across different apps, operators. It's not always reliable. Sometimes you have real-time data, sometimes not. So information and access to information and credible, reliable information is key. But of course, pricing is also a pain point. First of all, I think EV drivers don't understand what they are paying for. What is a charge? What do you pay when you charge? And we have to explain to them what they are paying. Then they don't understand the difference between CPOs and EMSPs. And we are talking about EV drivers, so sometimes people that made some long distance journeys, and they are quite understanding, but the general population don't. And when you are talking with someone that are not already willing to go electric, the first thing that will tell you, well, in France is we don't have charging stations. The second or third biggest charging network in Europe, but okay. And then, well, okay, but I won't be able to pay with my credit card. And I don't understand. And it is too complicated. I want to stay with my with fuel, with my petrol car, because it's more it is more simple. So we have to be to help everyone to understand all of that.
And typically would have campaigns that are also not only towards advocating to policymakers, but also towards civil society.
Yeah, but maybe a message of hope that I can share is that I think transparency is pricing are becoming more and more a real competitive factors between all operators, whether CPOs or EMSP. A few years ago, the only reason you would choose to charge somewhere is because there were charging station there.
Yeah.
So location was the first reason. Now you have reliability and pricing. If you have the certainty that you will find a charging point available and technically operational, you will go there. And then you will have to compare pricing.
All right.
So I think with the growth of the market, we will see a clearer path for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, in the end of the day, what I would also look at is, of course, the location, but I can easily, if I have the visibility, I might choose another location if I know a bit more about all those details. So you're right. And I've seen in France, especially, some of the big supermarkets and retail chains, also parking operators stepping in and owning the business instead of the previous strategies that they have. So it's telling me that those use cases are becoming more utilized. You mentioned utilization rates. In Italy, where do you see the biggest growth in terms of utilization?
This is a good question. For sure, there will be some space in private locations in which you can install, for example, some DC chargers, and you can in some way exploit the energy tariff that is lower.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you can propose in some way, you can offer a better pricing, because I agree with Clément, and I agree with you, of course. We can talk about accessibility. 70% of our drivers in Italy, they answered that they had at least one problem in charging operations. 30% they don't know how to call a support. So there are a lot of problems that we should solve, but at the end, one of the main problems is the price.
Yep.
And sometimes it's related to perspective, because most of the time we have also people that complain about the price, and they charge publicly just once a month. Okay, so actually it's not a proper signal, but it's a perception.
Yeah.
But it is true that in Italy, especially on DC charging, and I wanted to explain, it's not just the energy price, at a wholesale market. It's the price that the CPO should pay, and it's the energy price that it's in Italy. Unfortunately, it's super high. The network charges.
Yeah.
And
the demand charges, which can spike in some cases very much.
And taxes and parafiscal quotas.
Yeah.
In Italy, for example, we have this huge problem about how much is the weight of the power on the price. So the connection power weighs a lot on the price. And so we have the medium voltage tariff that it's the highest among the big markets in Europe, and can affect for the 60% the price of the final customer. So this is the situation. We can work again on. We can save some money on the installations, on the connections, but at the end, the point is the energy tariff. And we should work at European level about it, because we could, for example, work on a tariff that is made just by one component, that is the variable component with kilowatt hours, not taking into account kilowatt on the price, and starting with this low utilization rate. And when the utilization rate is growing at least, 6, 7, 8%, then we can switch to another kind of tariff. But it's really important at the very beginning, in order to sustain the investment that we need, and sustain the geographical spread out of the network, to lower the power quota, or to end and cancel the power quota on the energy tariff. Yeah. This is crucial.
Yeah, it's a super interesting perspective. I didn't know it would weigh that much as part of the overall sum, which if you're an operator who operates in several markets, you have to adjust for that certain specificity in Italy then, right? In order to be able to create the right pricing that ultimately works for you and works for customers. So when scaling across markets, this ultimately becomes a challenge, I can imagine.
Yeah.
But would you say there's a good example somewhere in Europe that you're familiar with?
Yeah, in some place in Germany, but Germany is really differentiated with
How
with
many
the network
DSOs?
1,800, I don't know,
Yeah.
something.
Between.
Yeah, right.
So there's that.
In Italy, we have less than I think less than 50. But the point is that it's differentiated. But also in France, or for example, also in Spain, there are some adjustment on the tariffs that can help charging points, especially HPC, at the very beginning of the installation. So with low utilization rate to sustain the business.
Okay.
And we have a benchmark. You can find it on our website. We studied the different tariffs in Europe with the AFRI. I think we could use the best one, Spain, for example, and use it as an European benchmark.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting. I'll make sure to get familiar with that. You mentioned it's with AFRI, right? Okay.
AFRI, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's it's telling how all those different markets bring different challenges to operators, and it's supposed to be a single market in the end of the day. We do have AFIR, and now with even more regulation coming at the sector, do you think that we're in a good spot right now in terms of the existing regulation, or you would suggest something else, like what you mentioned, for example? I don't know, any of you guys, if you have a wish list, if you had a commissioner here or like someone on the technical level that would get it.
You first.
I'm putting you on the spot with this one, but I have a thing that I can mention if you want.
Yeah, of course, there is still some regulation to be implemented, but to me, when we talk about consumer information, it all goes back to a regulation that we are awaiting in France in 2017.
Okay. Which one is that?
Well, it was just we implemented in 2017 AFID. Yeah. It was published in 2014, so we were a bit late, as always. And an additional regulation was supposed to be published. And the French administration never did. And we had a first draft, second draft, third draft, and so on. And then AFIR happened. Well, the talk around AFIR happened, and everyone at the French level was like, okay, hold on a minute, let's pause. Europe will figure it out. For us, it's perfect. Okay, let's. Europe is a perfect level to have that type of decision. But now that we have AFIR, we still have to talk with the French administration to respect AFIR, to have AFIR and only AFIR.
Yep.
And this morning, still this morning, I received an email saying that there will be a consultation on a new draft for a regulation at the French level.
Yep.
Even though we have AFIR that solves not everything, but that put in a frame in place that we already all agreed at the European level.
Yeah.
So
it's a
to
bit
be honest,
funny because
I am more anxious about what
what regulation can come in top.
yeah at the
And
national level rather than what we can do at the European level. So.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And typically a regulation is directly applicable, so you don't have to do anything. That's the whole idea. Maybe, Felix, you mentioned Denmark. You've been to the Nordics as well. You mentioned also Germany and other regions. Do you see something in those places which works really well and can be expanded to other places?
Well, for some reason, like clearly, for example, the Danish government, they simply sort of in a very shortcut way, copied Norwegian rules, taxation-wise. So the Norwegian government sort of decided that EVs would become, more affordable, and so when you have sort of this certainty of fleet growth, because month after month for 2 years now, we've seen growth number. So the Danish fleet is growing faster than Norway ever did, even though clearly in Norway they're at a higher rate, but that's simply because they started earlier. And so Denmark is one of these few markets, of course a very small country physically, but the CPOs there, they are actually competing because there is this huge fleet on the road every day, and they need to charge because it's a windy country, it's cold in winter, so they are helped by all kinds of natural circumstances, but there is a lot of need for charging, and there are a lot of players, and I think it is quite interesting that not all of these players. So in Europe, you see huge differences in who is actually, especially in the DC market.
All right.
You see a huge difference in, let's say, in France, we have a lot of CPOs who are sort of pure players. Like we have an Electra that I sort of call the French Fastnet, who is just doing charging, and they want to be good at it, clearly. And in Germany, you can see that if you look at the biggest players in fast charging in Germany, and we don't look at Tesla, then we see just energy giants and oil kings, and they might not be the first people to actually create the best charging environment possible. So I feel like also in a lot of the Scandinavian markets, there is real market competition, and clearly I guess they are helped by the energy network. Like clearly the DSOs there have their stuff sort of together, because I can just see that the rate of expansion is just so fast. Like you could never do that in the Netherlands, where you have to wait much longer for a grid connection, if it even is available at all. It's a bit odd to me, because in France, for some reason, even though I do see a lot of classic players there as well, it still feels way more competitive than the German market. And to this day, I'm sort of trying to find out why. But luckily, the Deutschlandnetz tenders, they have opened up a lot of physical spots in Germany. So there's now a lot of players coming in from sort of every other region than Germany to the German market. So there are today, way more than a year ago, there is sort of fair fast charging if you want to find it. But it might not be at your favorite Autohof yet. Well,
let's see how it goes in the next calendar year, and so as we have more investments going in the sector, I believe this has been a cautious tale, because there's been a lot of investment in the sector and a lot of capex installed, especially for the fast chargers, and now utilization has to pick up, as you mentioned, guys, earlier. Utilization in Europe is relatively low compared to other continents, especially looking at the US, for example. Now, obviously, different demographics, different realities, but we can all agree that if we get the utilization rates up, there's a logic that pricing should go down, and everything that most of the companies here are doing, one way or another, touches the topic of utilization, and I believe we're on the right track when it comes to solving that. But before closing this panel, I'd like to ask you guys if you want maybe to add something as a final message to the audience. You can say something more about the work that you do as well. I mean, up to you.
Drive electric. Come to Italy. We have charging points enough. We have a lot, actually. In Italy, we are not the champions in respect and translate the European regulations, but I assure you all that we are working hard to put the AFIR in place and to have the right transparency. we are working also with the government with some difficulties, but in price transparency. So I think we will enhance the charging experience in Italy in the next years.
All right, great.
As well.
Well, I always want to recommend people to, even if you don't drive electric today or you drive a certain vehicle, but whatever, I just love this idea of if you rent an EV somewhere, even on your holiday. Like I already went to Crete, and I got my girlfriend convinced to invest a little bit more in getting an EV. And the funny thing is that if you're on an island like Crete, which is one of the biggest islands of Greece at least, that we could drive around the island the whole week on the one charge. I only charged it to not bring it back empty to the rental agency, and the whole week we went everywhere we wanted to go. And so it just shows you that even on many islands today, there aren't that many chargers, but you also don't need that many. So it's not like we have to go on this blind investment spray of more chargers. Like in Germany today, there's simply way too many chargers because there's way too little EVs. And so, yeah. But anyway, by renting an EV, wherever you go, yeah, you can find out about the local atmosphere. You can find out how far you can go on a summer road trip, especially if you are on slower roads. Like I love in France to go off the toll road, because in an EV you really save double. No toll, you drive a bit slower, but you save on consumption like crazy, depending on your EV even more or less. And then there's also very fun charging deals that are way easier to find when you're not on these toll roads. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun with rental EVs. Yep. I recommend it to anyone, especially in a country like France. They're also the cheapest rental car in France today is an EV, and then it's also one of the countries where it's the very easiest to find cheap charging. So I hope you enjoy.
Well, and I mean, France has to add maybe something to that, but yeah.
Well, I should end with a positive note, but let's not forget that we are ahead of a huge battle in Europe around CO2 standards. Well, of course, this fight started a few months ago, and France, had a lot to do with it. But I think we should not forget that, because it will have a direct impact on CPOs and EMSPs, and of course on pricing. If tomorrow we don't have the same ambition, the same goal, and we don't sell enough EVs on the market, all the capex that you talked about earlier, all the investment that has been made already, can be a danger to CPOs. And what you do in that situation, either you have a higher price, or you lower it and you end up in a crazy battle of price that we know is never the solution. Yep. So we have to be prepared to have that fight at the European level.
Yeah, and I mean there will be other panels where this will be discussed, I'm sure, but the upcoming strategic dialogue that's happening in Brussels will surely tell a lot about the pace of innovation in the electric space, so to say. And more so about Europe's position globally when it comes to competitiveness. Because, of course, we're thinking now at country level, we should be thinking also at EU level, where we as an industry are positioned, I would say, quite okay right now globally. I mean, not on the vehicle production side or the battery, but at least in the charging space, I would say quite a lot of the leaders are in Europe. So we should try to preserve that competitiveness, and it has to be with that ambition that you mentioned as well. So just wanted to thank everyone for joining this first panel, and thanks to the panelists who joined me on stage. Please, round of applause for them. We will return at 4, right, guys? I'm looking there at my team. But yeah, we should return at 4 with a panel that will include members of eViolin. the industry organization that drives charging interoperability. We'll be talking about a lot of interesting things, so make sure you join us and grab some coffee to refresh now. All right, thanks.